What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of We Need to Talk. This is episode 416. Want to send a special shout out to everybody who has been tuning in, supporting the show. If you would like to support this nightly show, this nightly broadcast, be sure to click the links in the description box. They have different links there available if you want to donate, if you want to check out the online store, or if you would like to be a member of my coaching program that includes one-on-one coaching as well as my virtual wellness platform that's available 24/7. Be sure to check out the links in the description box and see what you would like to do, how you would like to either contribute or how you would like to get involved in your own healing. I'm definitely excited, to be able to help as many people as possible, especially in these times right now. So don't hesitate to connect with me on that level. And also, if you would like to contribute to the show, be sure to find the appropriate links in the description box. And everything is much appreciated. Any support of the show is much appreciated. So, also, if you are new and you've been checking this out, be sure to subscribe. Be sure to share and subscribe so that you're notified when I go live. I may go live at different times, especially on weekends and things like that. Different interviews, different content, and a lot more, to come in the near future. So, be sure to subscribe, and be sure to also share the broadcast with people who may be needing it, because a lot of these topics are geared towards where the need is, especially tonight. Wilmer Black, shout out to you. How you doing? So the question of tonight is, how do I know that I am healed? We live in an era now where being healed is a buzzword. Hurt people. So you should go get healed, or you should go get counseling, or you should, the recommendation becomes, well, you need to take care of you. You need to better yourself. And all of these things sound good, but what do they mean? And how do you know that it's happening? For a lot of people, I think there can be some confusion, especially since, we have catchphrases like time heals all wounds. And we have this expectation that because we're not in a relationship currently, that we're healing. If we were in a toxic situation, and because we broke up with that person, that we have transferred from being victimized to now all of a sudden healing by virtue of us not being in the relationship. And that couldn't be farthest from the truth. I think the misconception comes from a parallel where most people view healing as comparative to physical injuries. So a comparison between emotional pain and physical injury. Sometimes people equate the two. So because, if for example, you cut yourself chopping vegetables, at some point that cut will dry, scab, heal over. As long as you don't do anything extra to it. 9 times out of 10, it's going to heal on its own without a lot of thought, without a lot of extra care, without a whole lot of products involved, and without extra effort, on your part, and extra focus. So in that sense, yes, time does heal some physical wounds. So I think a lot of times we get used to that mindset and then go into these relationships, these traumatic situations coming out of childhood traumas, right? And we feel as though, okay, as long as I'm out of that house, as long as I'm not in that relationship, I'm healing myself. And I would argue that, you're not healing, you're just not impacted. And the parts of you that were changed have not been triggered yet. So you could lie dormant. You could be out of a relationship, feel fine on the surface. But once you start dating again, you're choosing based on your fears and your emotional injuries. You're self sabotaging based on your fears and your emotional injuries. And you're staying in a new toxic relationship based on your fears and emotional injuries. So that impact is still there, but it lies dormant until triggered, right? So the goal should be to purge the toxins, not sit until we feel them again. And this can be tricky for some people, especially if you don't feel different on a day to day. And I often say, okay, for the people who believe, okay, because I'm out of the relationship, that I am out of the fire, so to speak. So if you think of like just you stay in a burning house, uh, inhaling the smoke and just in the fire, in the heat for 2 years, some of these relationships. So like 2 years, you just in this burning house. You run out of that house. And now you're out of the relationship. You're out of the house. So it's not as hot, right? You feel immediate sense of relief, right? Are you out of the fire? Yes. Are you healing? No. Here's the reason. All of the smoke inhalation that occurred in a 2-year period has created internal toxins that have been unanswered for, and that will cause a slow deterioration if they are not removed, healed, reversed. So although you might not be sweating, although you might not have third-degree burns, being outside of the house and relationship, the internal effects are still toxic and still will keep you in those toxic dating cycles moving forward. So how do you know when you are healed and whole and all of these things that people tell you to do, right? Well, one of the biggest things, for me is about, especially as a coach, is to help people to change their default, because a lot of us are moving in autopilot, and we have to be at a point where we can examine ourselves objectively and say, okay, here's the stuff that I do. Here's my results. Here's how I act in relationships. Here's what I get back. And to be able to say, all right, that's not working. So what can be changed, right? And so part of the idea of okay, are you healed and things like that has to do with, can you make decisions that don't involve fear and imbalance? That's the main two factors that I look for when there's trouble, when there's toxic dating cycles, when there's irrational and self-deprecating core beliefs and all of these different things that rotate for people on a daily basis and operate in the background subconsciously. A lot of these things put us in positions to act in imbalances, right? Overly dating with a compulsion, a need. Something needs to happen right now. Somebody needs to, and lowering standards and doing these, making modifications and, putting ourselves always in connection with somebody. Always have to have somebody. Always have to be with somebody. Always have to fight against loneliness. Can't be alone. Have to be connected to somebody. That's an imbalance. That's an extreme. So when we can examine ourselves and know that we are acting from a basis of balance, from a basis of, because wholeness doesn't act in compulsion. Wholeness doesn't push us to do things that are detrimental and just keep doing it. That's not wholeness and balance. That's imbalance and fear. And then to the with the pendulum to the other side. If you're in a position where you are not dating at all, not because you're healing and growing yourself, but because you're scared of potentially meeting the wrong person or still traumatized and things like that. So you desire internally, you desire to date. You want to find your soulmate, things like that, but you're just at a point where you're too guarded, too frozen, too paralyzed by the process, and too against it based on expectations of negativity and of trauma. Well, that's the other extreme, right? So having to give up what you want for fear of letting something toxic in. Um, that's operating from an extreme standpoint. So wherever this, if you're acting from an imbalance or fear, if they're the motivators for your actions, then there's work to be done, right? If dating is something you cannot stop doing, that's an indication that there's still work to be done, right? If you can't freely just disconnect from the process, and not with hostility towards the process, but to withdraw and still be happy no matter what you're doing. So it's also, the indicator also is, what is your default emotional space, right? What is your default emotional space? When something good happens, you're going to feel good. When something perceivably negative happens, or something doesn't come through like you asked it, or like you wanted it to, um, there's the initial, we're all going to have this initial anger, maybe disappointment, frustration, right? But do you naturally come back to happiness? Do you naturally come back to peace? Do you naturally come back to positive expectation? Are you able to almost automatically convert negative situations to pulling the advantages and positives, and able to go about your day and it not shut you down, it not make it hard for you to get out of bed the next day, keep you in this low vibration? What is your default? This is what I do as a life coach and mental health and wellness coach. I focus on helping you to change your default, because we all have a default, and because of our core beliefs, because of our perspectives, because of our childhood processing, and how we make sense of our childhood environments and what's missing, and abuse, neglect, all of these different things, we create a negative default, whether that's a self-esteem default, abandonment default. What is the sensitivity, right? Some of us can encounter abandonment as a child and then end up being sensitive to abandonment so much that our default is the expectation of continuous abandonment, even when it's not imminent. Even when we date somebody who's not going to abandon us, we will contrive and create situations to make them abandon us, and then have that self-fulfilling prophecy and say, see, everybody abandons me. See, every time I get next to somebody, they leave or they abandon me, right? That's your default. That's not a good default, because you will carry that. Maybe you just came out of a relationship. You'll carry that to the next one. And then you'll carry that to the next one. And then you'll carry that to the next one. And then you will call it a cycle. But in reality, we have to focus on the fact that this cycle starts within. We shift ourselves. We turn the cycle off. It's not about the dating pool being negative, or having these traits, or everybody is like this. This is why I keep running into that. No, we have to make the internal shifts to create the new default setting, to take abandonment, things like abandonment, off the table. because again, that's fear and imbalance. If we encounter abandonment as a child, and then because our worldview has been shaped around abandonment and being scared of it, it reigns dominant in our psyche to the point where it's everywhere. It seems like everybody's doing it. Everybody's abandoning you. Everybody you encounter has these abandonment tactics, or they're ghosting you, or they're emotionally distant from you. They're not allowing themselves to be intimate and things like that. They're not being vulnerable. They disappear. They're in and out. They're intermittent. The abandonment continues because that's the default setting in your psyche. So again, as a coach, what I work to help people do is to change that default setting, because core beliefs do not, I repeat, they do not heal over time. So we have to kind of get some of these cliches off of the books, because this is not a heal with time situation. And if we expect it to, we will be disappointed. I know people personally who have taken massive amounts of time off of the dating sphere, off the dating scene, come back and encountered some of the same stuff, almost like they never left. And the expectation, they were frustrated because the expectation was that that the healing was happening in these years they took off. So they were just the sacrificing mindset to say, well, almost like a detox or a fasting. Well, let me just step out of it and let it work. But that's this game. It doesn't work in this game. Doesn't work in this game. And that can be frustrating for some people. So, to the healing aspect comes from when your default is changed, when you are able to change your default, and you can encounter a situation that maybe last year, 2 years ago, would have shut you down for 3 days straight. Now it's almost, you found the positive in it, and you might dip for a second, but you come right back. Finding that cruising altitude I always talk about, and being able to glide straight through, just like planes do. They might hit pockets of turbulence, but they recenter themselves. They get everything back aligned, and they travel safely. This is the thing. And I say cruising altitude because I take the approach of helping people to elevate. If you're going through a lot of stuff and having a lot of issues, a lot of toxic cycles and emotional roller coasters and stuff like that, my goal isn't to bring you back to regular post-trauma. My goal is to bring you back to new levels and new heights, to where you can be empowered to maintain the altitude that will be equivalent to your peak state, so that in areas like mental health, life purpose, dating and relationships, physical health, nutrition, all these different things, like, you are at those levels so that you can get yourself where you need to be over time. And your default is peace. Your default is positivity. Your default is elevation and growth at all costs. And you can easily prioritize yourself. That's another sign of being whole and being healed, is that you can safely understand the difference between being self-centered and prioritizing yourself. There's a connotation difference. And I think there's extremes in a lot of people's minds sometimes, to where if I ain't helping everybody, I ain't doing nothing. Or if I'm not helping everybody, I'm not valuable. Or if I'm not helping everybody else win, I'm not loved or worthy to be loved. Those are extreme thoughts. That's imbalanced thinking. That's taking on everything. And that will shut down the system and render you unable temporarily to be whole, because you're willing to be fractured by everyone else's problems. You're not giving yourself a chance to heal up, because you're taking on the problems, issues, obligations, responsibilities, pain, emotion, stress of everybody around you. And you're conditioning them to continue to dump their life on top of you, regardless of what's happening to you, and not reciprocate the energy. So wholeness and being healed, part of that has to do with safely and unapologetically being able to prioritize yourself before other people. And for some people, that's a breakthrough. That's crazy talk. That's crazy talk sometimes. But it's a necessity. Because how could you possibly be whole if you're not the focus? And then what's more, for all my helpers and rescuers, how can you adequately help the most people, be there for the most people, if number one isn't taken care of? If the server and helper is compromised, damaged, overwhelmed, inundated, immersed, drowning in problems, responsibilities, difficulties, etc. It's counterintuitive. So these are the factors to remain cognizant of when we're looking at the question, how do I know if I'm healed yet? And if it comes to dating, how you know you're healed and ready to date, because some of y'all need to take a damn break and sit on the bench and proactively heal the self, not sit on the bench and just allow the toxins to kind of just sit until it's jump ball. You know what I'm saying? We but targeting them and purging those toxins, right? And then elevating the self, focusing and prioritizing on yourself and creating value internally so that you create an energy field that's worthy of protection. You want to know why your boundaries are messed up? You want to know why you keep lowering the bar for people? Because on some level, you don't feel worthy enough of the standards you actually have. So that will cause you to negotiate in a passive way and kind of not be strict on anything and be overly outputting. There's no future in that. There's no safe and positive one at that. So if you are looking for help, if you're looking for coaching and assistance with this process, definitely be sure to to check out the description, get in contact, get in connection with me. We could set something up, and definitely check out the coaching website as well. Shout out to all of my people connected to Patreon. You guys are much appreciated. And hope this was helpful, because these factors are very important, and there has to be clarity. I'm not a cliche guy. I like to be clear and direct on the strategies, because so many times you just hear these buzzwords, and I think mental health, certain things become really trendy, but then there's really no direction. There's no specifics. There's no strategic way to even clarify or have an honest, clear look at what is the game plan? What am I even doing? Because if we still carry voids, it shouldn't be left to us to determine if we're healed or not. Because how do you know that's not the fear talking? Some people, for just people who date and things like that, may have the idea like, oh, okay, I'm good now, I'm healed up. Just the proverbial, or just the example of like just the athlete, like, I'm saying, yeah, I'm good, because not because you good, but because you want to get back in the game. Right? So is the desire talking? Is the void talking? Or is it intuition? Or what's the standard? I've just given you the standard. This is the metric. This is my metric for you to know, like, okay, I'm in the zone, because being healed isn't a complete process. It's a range for me, just my personal approach. It's a range. It's not like, okay, when the bone fuses, then you can take the crutches off. There's no specificity, but there for me, there is a range. There is certain tenets to know, okay, I'm in maintenance phase, right? because it's always a growth pattern. You're not done growing, you're not done learning, you're not done elevating. But wholeness, for the sake of our terms and things like that, has a definition. And I think tonight, hopefully, I've been able to put that together for you. So have a great night. I will be back tomorrow evening for another one. So thank you for watching. Thank you for continuing to support the show. Again, if you would like to support in any way, shape, form, or fashion, number one, be sure to subscribe and share, and also check out the description box as well. You guys have a great night. Talk to you soon.